I hate to break it to you all, but I simply can't stop and won't stop making tree-flavored ice cream and then eating it out of a bowl made out of wood from that tree. And today, I'm really getting to the root of the problem with one of North America's most iconic tree flavors. And it's not just iconic, it's also banned for commercial use by the FDA. So let's take a walk on the wild side. These smell so good. Wow.
Here's a nice up-close look at some of the pre-cut chunks of sassafras roots I got. Now, obviously this is something I would have much preferred to dig out of the ground myself, but this tree isn't native to my neck of the woods. But luckily, while commercial use is banned by the FDA, they're totally legal to sell and buy online for at-home use. But before we get into why it's banned and whether or not I'm actually risking my life, let's first turn these roots into some ice cream. To do that, I'm just going to dump some of these root chunks into some cream and milk and slowly bring that up to a simmer for just a few minutes, then cover and let that infuse for 30 minutes up to an hour. After which we just strain out those roots, and now I've got some sassafras root infused cream to use as a base in my ice cream recipe of choice. And I'm already getting a strong root beer aroma in the cream, which is unusual for these wood ice cream videos. Oftentimes the cream tends to drown out the aroma of the wood, so I think we're off to a good start. Now, I've been thinking a lot about what I can mix into this recipe to punch it up a little bit more. Much like last episode's cedar ice cream, the sassafras lacks any edible fruit or nuts to mix in, and while last time I went extra hard with that cedar smoked chocolate that I molded into the shape of cedar cones and leaves, I thought this time I'd keep things a little bit simpler for myself and just lean really heavily into that sassafras flavor. So while the ice cream base hangs out in the fridge overnight, I'm going to make a root beer syrup to swirl into it. I'm going to add more of those sassafras roots to some water and then bring that to a simmer, and this time I'm going to add some whole spices to punch up the flavor. Star anise, cloves, cardamom pods, coriander, black peppercorns, and a cinnamon stick. Cover and let that simmer for 15 to 20 minutes, and then I'm going to add some molasses for a bit of flavor and also to give us a nice dark root beer brown color. Bring it back to a simmer and then cover and let rest off heat to infuse for 20 to 40 minutes. Then strain that all out and add equal parts sugar to the root beer tea. I'm using mostly granulated sugar, but I want to add some corn syrup because I want this to remain a scoopable caramely ribbon when it's frozen into the ice cream. I also clearly misjudged the volume here, so let's dump it back into the larger pot, and now I'm just going to let this reduce until thick and syrupy. Just got to be careful not to overdo it lest I turn it into a brick. And I'm going to jar this up, let it come down to room temperature before also placing it in the fridge overnight. And now it's time to churn up that ice cream. Now, normally while churning, this is where I would add in the mix-ins, but adding the root beer syrup inside of here would end up with it being overly mixed in, perhaps disappearing into the ice cream altogether. So instead, once it's done, I'm going to grab a loaf pan and layer ice cream, drizzle some root beer syrup, add another layer of ice cream, drizzle some more syrup, do some very light swirling, and all this should leave us with some distinct layers of sassafras ice cream and root beer syrup ribbons. Now, while the ice cream firms up in the freezer, it's time to head down to the wood shop to make an ice cream bowl and spoon out of some sassafras wood.
Thanks to the internet, I was able to procure a really lovely thick sassafras bowl blank. The word sassafras really makes everything more fun to say. Sassafras bowl blank. Its grain looks quite similar to ash. It's got that open grain structure. I think we could avoid some tear out here. I think this is gonna be a pleasant experience. What I'm most curious to see though is what is the smell of this wood going to be like compared to the deep aromatic scent of sassafras roots? Are we gonna get that root beer smell from the wood as well, or is it gonna be different? And I'll tell you this, if it ends up smelling really different, I think I might just have to make a second batch of ice cream using the wood to see how that compares to the roots. Guess we'll see. All right, let's drill some holes in this, and it feels nice to finally, in this series, have a good thick bowl blank to work with. We're able to make a nice deep bowl. I guess the oak one was fairly deep, but that was so full of cracks. This is the upside as well to buying on the internet a bowl blank from someone that actually properly preps their bowl blanks instead of me who just chucks logs on a pile. One of these days, kiddos, I'll do it right. Let's find the center. Pencil won't work on this, so I'm going to use ye ol' screw. Scratch that in the wax. No! Whoops. Okay, this is exciting. I'm excited. I hope you are excited too. So far, it still just smells like wax. Let's go. That's wild. So it does smell different from the roots. I think it's definitely official. I'm going to have to try making ice cream with pieces of the wood now as well. Yeah, it has like a hint of the root beer scent to it, not nearly as strong as the roots, and also kind of different from the roots. Almost like a spiciness to it. It's quite different. Fun colors in there though. I think it's gonna be a lovely ice cream bowl. Get back to work.
All right, let's get into it. Is this tree toxic or what? Am I gonna die from eating the ice cream I've got waiting for me in the fridge? Well, as some of the comments in each of the tree ice cream videos that I've made thus far would have you believe, every single tree I'm using is toxic or poisonous or carcinogenic, so I guess it depends on who you ask and what their definition of toxic is. Today, though, we're talking, of course, about Sassafras albinum, also known as white sassafras, red sassafras, silky sassafras, or just sassafras, which it's just so fun to say that word, sassafras. This tree, which is native to the eastern US, has been used by humans for a variety of purposes for thousands of years. Its stems, leaves, bark, flowers, and especially its roots. Sassafras root tea is a traditional indigenous beverage among basically every tribe within the tree's native range, and it's believed to be good for the blood and help with ailments like fevers and colds. This spicy, aromatic tree was also instantly popular amongst European colonizers, both for its flavor and for its medicinal properties. The plant quickly developed a booming market in 16th and 17th century Europe as a cure-all for everything from the common cold to syphilis. In fact, for a period of time in the early 1600s, sassafras was the second largest export from North America, behind only tobacco. In the 1800s, the sassafras found an entirely new life with the birth of root beer. This drink, typically flavored with sassafras root, molasses, spices, and often other plants like wintergreen and sarsaparilla, was initially consumed as a hot medicinal beverage before being combined with soda in the mid-1800s and sold as a soft drink. Pharmacist Charles Elmer Hyers was the first to commercialize the drink. He was a teetotaler and thus wanted to call the product root tea, but ended up settling on root beer in the hopes that it'd make the drink more appealing to Pennsylvania coal miners. The drink quickly grew in popularity, especially during Prohibition, and most large commercial root beers were flavored using actual sassafras roots until 1960, when it was banned by the FDA. But before we get into the reasons why, check it out, the ice cream bowl is all done.
I kind of like that. This is a shape that I'm gonna have to work on a bit, I think. But for a sassafras ice cream bowl, we have a winner here, I think. Now it's time to carve the spoon, and I want to try something new that I've never tried before. I think I'm gonna try to make my spoon on the lathe. See how that turns out. For now, actually, though, I'm gonna call it a day. I'll be back tomorrow. Okay, I've got another piece of sassafras wood here. This came from I had this much larger chunk of a sassafras bulb length that I bought. Cut a couple chunks off the side there. Rough cut it out on the bandsaw. Basically, try to put it on the lathe this way, shape some sort of tenon, flip it around, carve the bowl out. Kind of similar to how I do a bowl, just with like a spoon handle whipping around here. So it'll be a little scarier, a little more dangerous. This is not something I'd recommend you start out. If it's your first time using a lathe, don't try to make a spoon on a lathe for your first lathe project. But I think this could go well. I think this might work out for us. So where's a pencil? All right, so let's...
Okay, so it's finally time to try and answer that big question. Am I risking my life to eat this bowl of ice cream? Well, to try and answer that, we need to talk about the study that led to sassafras root being banned in the first place. In this study, rats were given high doses of saffrole, which is the compound found in sassafras oil. This resulted in the rats developing liver cancer, and the FDA felt confident enough in the study to conclude that saffrole oil could cause cancer in humans, and they banned its use in commercial products. Now, again, that's not to say that sassafras roots are illegal to forage, consume, or even sell online. Again, I was just able to buy a bag of these on Etsy. But what it did mean is that any commercial product like root beer had to transition to using either synthetic flavorings or other natural flavorings like sarsaparilla or sassafras extract that had the saffrole removed. So why am I so confidently making sassafras root ice cream? Well, that's where we need to turn to that trusty phrase, the dose makes the poison. From what I could gather, there were two major studies performed in which rats were given a lot of saffrole oil over an extended period of time. Translated to a human dose, it was somewhere between 1 to 10 grams per day every day. To put that into perspective, when root beer was made with actual sassafras root, it contained around 2 milligrams of saffrole per 12-ounce serving. Homemade sassafras tea, on the other hand, can vary a lot depending on how it's prepared, ranging from 2 milligrams up to maybe a max of 100 to 200 milligrams per serving for a really strong brew. So on the high end of the study, it was like drinking 100 cups of a strong sassafras tea or 5,000 bottles of root beer every single day. Now on the lower end study, it was more like drinking 5 to 10 strong teas or several hundred bottles of root beer every single day. And well, contrary to what some fearmongers on the internet like to tell you, the FDA has a pretty hard line when it comes to ingredients that can actually be directly linked to cancer in studies. So it was banned entirely for commercial use just to be on the safe side. So why am I taking this risk? Am I in trouble here? Well, I'm taking the context of the figures in that original study and the knowledge that sassafras root tea is a traditional beverage humans have consumed for thousands of years, and I'm making an informed decision for myself. This wouldn't be an ice cream I'd feel comfortable eating in large quantities every day, but such a low dose and frequency doesn't have me worried.
I'm feeling nervous about the structural integrity of this. It's not going to hold up to much. I accidentally got the handle way too thin.
Of course, if you're curious about trying this at home, just do your due diligence. If you have any underlying health issues, if you are or may be pregnant, make sure you know your situation and the risks that come with using any foraged ingredient. So consider this your official disclaimer. And would you look at that? The sassafras wood bowl and spoon are both done. The spoon on the lathe was a bit of a mixed bag. I think I'd like the method a lot more for making like a larger spoon, but it was a fun experiment. The bowl I'm really happy with, playing around with kind of a Japanese rice bowl inspired shape, and I really like how it looks, some lovely color, even a little bit of chatoyancy in there too. Now, like I said a minute ago, the wood really did have a pretty distinctively different aroma than the roots. So I decided to do some more experimenting using sassafras wood chunks in some cream to see how that ice cream compares with the root ice cream. And I don't know, I find this really fascinating how the roots of the same tree could possibly create an entirely different flavor than the wood that's just a little bit higher up the tree. Anyway, just speeding through the ice cream process here, you know the drill by this point. I am having some fun churning it up in the wood shop. I can't believe I didn't try this out before. I have to do this every time from now on, but I'm going to layer this one with the root beer syrup as well so that it's a better one-to-one comparison with the root version. And into the freezer it goes to firm up. So now just one final step before I'm ready to scoop up a bowl of these ice creams and see how they taste, and that's to turn our attention back to the US Tree Map Volume 2, where I think the sassafras is going to make a really excellent addition, so let's use some more of its wood to make the state of Tennessee, and I'll give you a few more facts about this amazing tree. It's a vigorously growing small to medium-sized tree that is found throughout the eastern U.S., where it prefers rich, well-drained, sandy soil and often grows in large patches on recently disturbed sites. A couple of features of the sassafras I find pretty neat are its leaves. Those 3 lobes kind of make me think of like a dinosaur foot or something. And its fruit is also really interesting, almost alien-like. They're inedible for humans, but birds are big fans. Speaking of the leaves, though, they also have a lot of culinary use. When dried and ground up, they're used to make filet powder, a seasoning used in Creole cuisine, particularly in making gumbo. Sassafras wood is hard and durable in soil thanks to some of its natural oils, which also makes it an effective fire-starting wood. And I like the grain and color in it as well. It's given us a pretty good-looking Tennessee and an excellent addition to Tree Map Volume 2, and that's it. We're all done. It's finally time to bust out our sassafras root ice cream. We're going to start with that one, and normally I scoop it up with the wood spoon that I've carved, but A, that thing was so thin, and B, I wanted to give our root beer ribbons a chance to scoop up really well, and all that's left to do now is give it a taste.
Okay, very happy to see that the swirl seems to have worked perfectly. If anything, I probably could have added more of it, but I wanted to make sure that we could really taste the cream here. Extremely nervous about breaking the spoon. This is just so papery thin, but so far, it's holding up. Moment of truth time, tree ice cream number 4, down the hatch. Wow. This is so good. I want to cry a little bit. Okay. I don't even know how to talk about this. I just want to keep eating it. Let me get a good bite. That is only cream, no swirl. How does the root infused cream taste on its own? That is so good. It is an undeniable root beer flavor just infused in the cream itself. There's not really like a woodiness or anything to it. It just tastes like root beer. I know, shocker, but it's like just a very pure root beer flavor. Let's get a really syrupy bite here. Here's a swirl heavy spoonful. Let's taste that. Oh, yeah. If anything, I definitely could have added more of that root beer syrup. Because of those infused spices, like a really warm, spicy root beer, better than any root beer I've ever had. I honestly don't even care if this thing gives me cancer. Worth it. Doing it for the rats. Now, of course, we got to see, how does the wood flavored one stack up? So I already feel like this is not going to be very fair because I just inhaled a lot of the root flavored ice cream because it was so good. But I am curious. The wood really did smell quite different than the roots. Let's see which one is better. Can even smell the difference. Interesting. The cream is far less noticeable. The root infused cream, you get that sassafras root beer-like flavor kind of immediately. With this one has like a lighter flavor. It's almost, for lack of a better term, like fruitier than the roots. It's got like a brightness to it. Whoa, okay, yeah. I don't like this one as much, and I'll tell you exactly what it is. The flavor, the initial flavor itself is actually pretty good, and it does work really well with the swirl. But then after a few minutes, my mouth starts to water. I get that tannic sensation. It just tastes woodier, I guess is unsurprising, but woodier than even any of the previous tree flavored ice creams I've done so far. I'm not gonna finish this bowl. I've had so much ice cream already. I am ready to rank though, and I don't think we're gonna have any surprises here. Okay, there it is, the sassafras, our 4th tree that we've turned into ice cream. I kind of can't believe it that what began as just a fun way to use the wood from the Colorado map piece episode has now turned into a bona fide series that I can't stop thinking about. Every day I'm coming up with new trees that I want to taste as ice cream. So don't worry, this isn't going anywhere. We're going to keep making flavors. We're going to keep making bowls and spoons, and we are going to keep rating them. So on that note, sassafras ice cream, how does it rate? You know what? I think that each of these ice creams thus far have had a little bit more going on in terms of the full ice cream effect. Oak had those candied acorns. Hickory had those candied hickory nuts. We had our smoked chocolate in here. So these had a bit more variety. We are grading strictly the root infused one. We're going to ignore the wood infused. That was a side tangent that didn't really work. The root infused ice cream on this, that is an easy 10 out of 10. I don't know how you could have anything better. Maybe some trees will taste as good. I think if I'm being honest about the full experience, this might be more of like a 9.8 9.8 to 9.7, just because it is a tiny one note. There's not the interesting things that are going on with some of these other ones, but I think I'm gonna split the difference. I'm gonna go 9.9 on this. Easy, new, number one. I don't remember the scores of these other ones off the top of my head, so here they are here through the magic of editing. Huge thanks as always to my patrons and members who help support the long form content on this channel. And there we have it. A new champion has arrived, but will it be dethroned? Only one way to find out. Let me know in the comments what tree we should turn into ice cream next. Oh boy, I ate way too much ice cream. Oh.